Now we're going to make a strong statement, and you will understand it completely. In contrast and in step one, that's where humans do the majority of their thinking. And it's that thinking process that does all of the asking and is responsible for everything that's in the vortex. So it is enormously important. It's important to have exposure to life that causes you as an individual to identify what is important to you. Mark Twain was very wise in understanding that when I am having an individual experience, it's different than when I'm being swept up in the mass consciousness of something else. The only way to feel the connection with your own source is in your individual experience. So let's go back again. We want to be clearer about this. So the distinction that we're asking you to reach for is the distinction between thinking a thought and receiving a thought. And both are important to the equation because step one matters, and step two matters, and step three matters. Sometimes in the contrast that you are knowing about, and the contrast that you are writing about, and filming about, or telling a story about, you bring the contrast closer to someone who might not have experienced it otherwise. So then there is a stronger asking. And if in the process of your film, you are not just asking, but you're also allowing yourself to get into alignment so that you are receiving, sometimes you can put viewers in a position of, in the length of time of one film, no matter how long it is, that they might do a step one and a step three all within the same film. And the light approach to it, or the humorous approach to it, or the receptive mode approach to it is the only way that that would happen. Most everybody is pushing so hard against things that they have done their asking, but then they hold themselves in such perpetual asking that they don't allow the answer to ever come. And so you know that you have had success, at least the success that you're reaching for, which is to uplift others, when you find people thinking about things that maybe they have not thought about before, feeling the discomfort of discovering something within it that they maybe have never felt before, and then finding the relief of that new discovery. One of the things that is nice about humor or comedians or comedy in and of itself is that it often does build a bridge. In other words, it puts you in a mode of reception faster. But what's the point of being in the receptive mode if you don't have a question that is important to you to receive? And so with the right balance, and we think you're striking that, that's what you're accomplishing. That's why so much of it is inspired.
Thank you. And now that these are done, and I just put them up on YouTube the other day, I've also written a full-length film, which is not anti-war, it's just a full comedy. You might call it a spiritual comedy, actually, that hasn't been produced. And I'm not sure whether I feel I should start producing these feature films, because that's what really gets out there, and that's what Hollywood works with. But I'm wondering whether I should push forward with that, so when Hollywood says, what else have you got, I can say, here's what else I have, or whether I should just rest with that a while and work on marketing, getting the short films out there that are done.
Well, the whole point of getting ready to be ready to be ready to be ready to be ready is to illustrate that when you're in alignment, that the feeling that will lead you to the next and the next and the next is there. Your impulses have been leading you well. You asked two questions, and we want to answer both of them. But the one that we want to answer first is about the larger production and the getting to the larger audience. So we have some questions for you. Mark Twain said, and you said he said, and he said, that in the larger experience, sometimes what the individual would do is different. And so, do you feel that the larger audience, because you've been getting ready to be ready to be ready to be ready, has the larger audience been getting ready to be ready to be ready to be ready?
I believe they have, because when I go to LA to shoot my films, I'll, for example, chat with the Lyft driver who's taken me to the location, and if they ask me, I don't push it, but if somebody asks me, hey, what are you doing here? I'm shooting a film. Oh, what kind of film? What's a comedy? Oh, what's it about? Then I tell them, and they're always like, wow, that's great. And every once in a while, somebody will even start quoting like defense budget figures to me or something. So I think the audience is ready.
And so there's your answer. You know that you're ready to be ready. But when you're offering something to someone and you're thinking about attraction, has life prepared your audience for what you now are wanting to offer them? Because this is the thing that we want you to contemplate. In the what you might want to call smaller films, there are smaller audiences. But because they are smaller audiences, they are niche audiences that you have specifically sort of vibrationally planned for. So there is a high rate of receptivity. It's sort of like their receptive mode is already planned, and so there's a strong feeling of acceptance. And so then your logic says, well, if this small group is ready for this, then the larger group must be ready for this too. And we say, if the larger group were ready for this, they would be part of that small group. And there is a certain logic that says, if they were part of that small group, then the small group would be getting bigger, and it is. But can you hear the question that we're asking you? Do you think that the larger audience, the worldwide audience, the Hollywood audience, that larger audience, do you think it is ready and wanting your smaller films?
The smaller or the larger?
The smaller.
Oh, the general audience. Well, we'll find out when they've been on YouTube for a month, I think, and we'll see whether, but it's a unique package. I haven't seen anything else like it, and I've done 8 of them, not just one of them. And some of them are soft and gentle, and some of them are a little bit harsh, although still comedic. We
were sort of baiting a trap for you because we wanted it to occur to you as we're moving through this.
That maybe the larger audience isn't ready?
Well,
I'm not saying it'd be blockbuster.
Here's what we're getting at. When you think about attraction and you think about what you're offering and you just end it there, and because you know about attraction and because you are so invested vibrationally in what you're offering, and when you're offering no split energy about it, just enthusiasm about it, and then you put it in a position where others can find it, and you let law of attraction do its work, that's far different than when you have decided that you're going to promote something. In other words, the only way that you can really know what people are ready for is if you allow law of attraction to do its work. And the way you allow law of attraction to do its work is by you getting into the receptive mode, following the impulses that come to you. Think about it. Do you believe that what you're offering is of benefit to the world?
Yes.
We do too. And do you believe that your inner being understands that it's of benefit to the world?
Yes.
And did you hear our conversation earlier? And do you believe that all of the inner beings of all of the people on the planet know what is of value to them and what the path of least resistance is?
Yes.
And do you believe that you have access to that sort of inspiration?
Yes.
And in the same way that you received the ideas for the movie, and in the same way that the next idea came and the next and the next and the next and then unfolded and unfolded, doesn't it seem perfectly logical that all of the next ideas would come too relative to the distribution of it or the promotion of it? In other words, do you think that your inner being is only helping you with the inspiration of the movie? Is your inner being only writing the movie? Or does your inner being know how to distribute the movie? Does your inner being know what the subjects are that would be the most received by the most people? The point that we're getting at is, don't just move forward, which you don't, in the methodical practice of the way people usually go about these things. Let it be the unprecedented way of receiving it and getting ready to be ready, to be ready, to be ready, to be ready. See what we're getting?
Yeah.
We don't want anyone to ever think that there is something about a subject that should be avoided, because in every subject there is value. But when there is a subject that is so on the minds of so many, and when people are in modes of feeling vulnerable, which means they're in the mode of stirring up the problem, but they're not in the mode of receiving the answer, that's the most out of balance that humanity can be.
That's like watching a documentary on war, and I watch them because I'm interested, and I sometimes get inspired to write something comedic. But there's also an aspect to watching a documentary. You just want to turn away. You don't want to see the horrible things.
Well, because that's that out of balance thing. When you are focused upon something that stirs contrast within you, and you are in this vulnerable place where the more contrast that is stirred, the more vulnerable you feel, then nothing positive has been accomplished. But when you've explored contrast and you feel it, and then the feeling of discord lifts from you, as it does with humor or clarity. Esther says many times as she is moving through a week that even though there was a little discomfort in such and such, the clarity was such a big payoff. And she's beginning to understand that with clarity has to come something that you're reaching for, because clarity is moving out into something that is new. That's that feeling. That's that feeling of expansion and the feeling of conscious expansion. There's just nothing more exhilarating than that. We want to go back and emphasize this because we think this is something that you've known. It may even be something that you say often, but we really want you to feel the reason that you feel it so strongly and how it fits into the laws of the universe in such a powerful way. Anything that causes people to ask is good for them. But if they are asking and asking and asking and asking with no relief from the tension and the resistance, then that's not good for them. And that's sort of the state of things these days. There are so many things that people are worried about, and so many people are beating the drum of what they're pushing against, that they're not giving themselves the opportunity to move from step 1 into step 3. And it is our knowing that that's what you are accomplishing in the balance of these films. And if it's what your intention is with everything, then there will always be success, because people want to feel good. But how are you going to know you feel good unless how you really feel about something has been emphasized enough that you're really feeling it? The thing that's going on with people today, and this is one of the reasons that we know that you were inspired to this particular subject. The thing that's going on with so many people today is that they are feeling negative emotion, and then they are accepting that negative emotion is just inevitable, and so they're not really reaching for the relief that they must find.
Well, that's what I try to do in my films.
Yes.
I try to show people
Yes.
that there's an alternative.
Yes.
You don't have to accept
Yes.
these things that war brings about, and if enough people change their individual thinking,
Yes.
then eventually, maybe not this year, maybe not this decade, but eventually things will change for the better. And I actually believe things are already changing for the better.
We do as well.
But I think they can change more quickly for the better if we can change enough individual minds to have an effect on mass consciousness.
Yeah. It's not so much of changing their minds as it is introducing a thought that they recognize that feels better. Now that sounds like changing their minds, but when you think of getting ready to be ready. So if their emotion shifts without their full awareness of why, then that's a little more readiness and a little more readiness and a little more readiness and a little more readiness. And that's why contrast is always such a good thing, because contrast causes you to know what you don't want, which causes you to know what you do want, whether you know that you know what you do want or not. There's something that is in your vortex that now you own. It is yours, that under the right conditions could be activated within you. And when something that you've put into your vortex is activated, then there's big benefits. So imagine what's going on worldwide with so much contrast and so much concern about so many things. Imagine what's going on with the vortex these days. This vortex is expanding unlike anything that has ever been before. And so the asking is so much stronger. And then when something comes along that causes a little more allowing than usual, big, it's almost what paradigm shift is about. It's almost what paradigm shift is about. It's what the 100 monkey thing is about. It's enough people finding enough relief that it tips. And when it tips, then momentum ensues. And when momentum ensues, then there is more exaggerated, consciously received benefit for more people. And that's why you're excited about what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you.